Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and on today's video I'm going to show you how to install Windows 11 cleanly without a Microsoft account, how to set up all your drivers and get your system ready for its first use. Now this video may be a long one, so do strap yourselves in. There are going to be some things you're going to need as a prerequisite to get started. Ideally you want 2 USB drives, one of which we're going to put an image of the Windows 11 installation on, and the other one we might potentially use to put some drivers on for our motherboard, just in case for some reason when Windows 11 installs that it doesn't pick up certain things like your Wi-Fi or your Ethernet, which is going to be really important going forward. Also, you will need a working PC or laptop, or possibly even a Macintosh, just so you can actually download the stuff onto the USB drives before your PC's working, because obviously if you haven't got Windows installed, there's not a lot you can do with it. So with all that out of the way, let's head over to the computer first of all and let's get Windows put onto our USB drive ready for installation. So there we go, we've put our USB drive into the computer. This has actually got an older installation of Windows 11, so let's close that for now. And what we're going to do is go over to the Microsoft site. I'll put links for this in the video description. If not, just type into Google Windows 11 Media Creation Tool and you should end up on a page that looks very similar to this. Now there's a couple of options we've got here. So we've got the installation assistant. So that is if you're upgrading your existing PC that you're on at the moment. You've also got the option to create Windows 11 installation media. That is what we're going to be doing. Or there's options to download the ISO image, which can be used with other things such as Rufus, etc. But we're going to be concentrating on this one to create installation media. So we're going to click on download now. We'll save this to our Windows desktop. And then we can minimize this window, and there is our media creation tool. Now this tool here is just the tool that needs to be run. Don't put this straight onto a USB stick. A lot of people do that and it doesn't work. You do have to actually run this program to set up your USB drive. So we're going to double click on the installation. We'll approve this in user account control, and it will say getting a few things ready. You'll have to go down and accept all of the user agreements. And now you can select a language in addition. Now, if you want to, it will pick up the ones automatically. We're in the United Kingdom, so it's picking up English United Kingdom. If you're in a different country or you want to choose a different language, you can do that by removing this tick box and choose whichever version you want. And also the addition of Windows, unfortunately, is only Windows 11 for this particular guide. So we could just use the recommended options for this PC. So we're going to click on next, and we have to choose which media to use. So it wants to use a USB flash drive. That's what we ideally want to do. We don't want to do an ISO file for later. So USB flash drive, and it's got to be at least 8 gigabytes in size. It can be larger, but it has to be at least 8 gigabytes. So when you're happy, click on next, and it will select a USB drive from your system. At this point, ideally, you want to have just the USB drive that you're going to be using. If you've got other USB devices connected, ideally disconnect those. But when you find the right one, so ours is drive D, that's absolutely fine. So we'll click on next. And now what it's going to do is going to go off to the Microsoft servers, and it's going to get the very latest version of Windows 11, download it onto your computer, create the installation image, and then transfer it to the USB drive. This will take a good few minutes, so let this carry on do its thing, and we'll come back when there's something else to interact with. Okay, so we've come to the end now, and it says your USB flash drive is ready, so we can click on finish, and then set up or remove the files that it doesn't need. So at this point now, we can unplug our USB stick, put that somewhere safe, and for the next part, I'm going to plug in another drive, and this has just got a BAS file on, so that's going to be absolutely fine. And what we're going to do is open up the website for our particular motherboard in our computer. So this is actually going to be quite useful if for some reason Windows doesn't pick up the drivers for things like your LAN or your wireless. It's worth having these downloaded. So this particular board is ASRock B550 Pro 4. So what we're going to do is go ahead and get the Realtek LAN driver. So we'll click on global and we'll download that to our desktop as well. And also we might as well get the Wi-Fi. Actually no, this board hasn't got Wi-Fi, so we don't need to get that. We could also, while we're here, get the AMD chipset driver and also the high definition audio driver. The choice is yours, but for our particular instance, I'm just going to rely on the Realtek LAN driver. So we've got the folder downloaded here. This is a zip file, so we're going to unzip this, do extract all, and that will give us our installation folder. So we've got all of the install files in there. So what we're going to do is now we're going to take this folder, right click on it, choose copy, head over to our other USB drive, right click and choose paste. So now if for some reason it doesn't pick up our LAN driver, we've got it on a USB stick so we can manually install it. Hopefully we won't need it, but it's worth having just in case. If you're doing this on a PC before you do a major upgrade and it's your only working PC, it's worth having the extra drivers. So just bear in mind how many drivers you need and what motherboard it is and get those ready. So we've got all of our USB drives ready now, so I can remove that one. And now we can get on to actually installing Windows. So let's turn this computer off and we'll get the other ones set up. Okay, so now we've turned on our computer, the new computer, and we've got our boot drive actually inserted into one of the USB ports. On your motherboard, you'll probably have a F key or function key that can enter a boot override or boot manager. Now, if it's a brand new PC with a brand new drive, it will automatically try and boot from the USB stick because that is the only bootable device. If the drive is a used drive or perhaps has information on it, it may try to actually boot from it. So you want to go in and choose a boot option. So for this one, we don't want the Windows Boot Manager, we want the UEFI, which is the Kingston Data Traveler drive that we're using, which has our Windows installation. So we'll select that, press enter, the computer is now going to reboot again. You'll probably hear your fans ramping up, and then it's going to try to boot from the USB stick, at which point we can begin our Windows 11 installation. Okay, so we're started into the Windows setup. So obviously choose the language which is appropriate to you, also your time and currency and your keyboard. When you're happy, press next, and then click on install now. Now at this point you can pre-activate your Windows. So if you have a Windows 11 license key, you can put it in now if you wish to. Alternatively, if you don't have one, you can click on I don't have a product key. If you don't have a product key and you want a new Windows 11 or Windows 10 license, you can head over to premiumcdkeys.com/Mike's Unboxing and you can pick up a new Windows 10 or 11 professional license key for somewhere in the region of about £3 UK. Links will be in the video description. We do make a small commission on every purchase. So in this instance, I'll say I don't have a product key, and we can choose which version of Windows we want to do. So choose the version which is appropriate to you. Most people, I think, will go for Windows 11 Pro. That seems to be the best one to go for. When you're happy, click on Next. At this point, you can accept the license terms. You don't really have a lot of choice there. And you have the option for Upgrade or Customized. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose Customized. And for this instance, because we've got a previous installation, we're just going to remove all of these drives. So get rid of all your partitions if you're happy to do so. If it's a drive you want to keep data on, obviously don't do this. And you want to get back to the point where you just have a single drive listed if you've only got one drive installed and with the approximate correct size. So ours is a 1 terabyte drive, so after Windows formatting it's going to be about 930 odd gigabytes. So choose the drive you want to install Windows. If you've got extra drives connected, it's probably a good idea to remove them during Windows installation. When you're happy, click on Next. And now it's going to copy the files from the USB stick to your hard disk drive or your SSD or your NVMe drive. And then when it's finished, it'll go through, do multiple restarts, and then we'll get the out-of-box experience. Just be patient, let it do its thing. Shouldn't take too long. At this point, when Windows wants to do its first restart, you can remove your USB drive if you wish. So at this point now, we are starting the Microsoft out-of-box experience, at which point you can choose your country or region. So we're in the United Kingdom. It will ask about the keyboard. Yep, we are also using a United Kingdom keyboard. Obviously, if you're using a US keyboard, feel free to add that. If you want to add a second one, you can also do that. I'm going to click Skip. Now Windows is going to check for any existing Windows updates, making sure it has the latest versions of the software installed from the get-go. So at this point you can name your device. You can't name the device the same as you're going to have your username, so just call it whatever you want. This is actually a ASRock PC, so I'm going to call this ASRock. Now at this point it's going to try to connect to a network. I would suggest, if you can, have your Ethernet cable connected at this point. Otherwise, you'll have to use one of the methods to circumvent this logon process, of which we've done numerous videos. So I'll try and link some of those in the video description. But for most people, it should connect to your network. If it asks you for your Wi-Fi credentials, at this point is a good time to put them in, assuming that the drivers for your Wi-Fi are actually installed by Windows, which most of them will be, but there will be some very modern boards which perhaps won't, in which case that is where that driver disk might come in useful, because it may well ask you for them. So we're connected to the network, so we'll click on Next. Now this is everyone's favorite part, where you have to choose which you want to use it for. So if you want to use a Microsoft account, do listen very carefully. So if you want to use a Microsoft account, sorry, the graphics drivers must have been installing in the background there. Yep, we've gone into 4K mode, so text is going to be a little bit smaller. So you get the option of how would you like to set up this device. If you're using a Microsoft account and you wish to use a Microsoft account, choose the top one for personal use. If you don't want a Microsoft account, click on this one here at the bottom, set up for work or school. So I'm going to click on set up for work or school. This is how to actually not use a Microsoft account, just to make this perfectly clear before we go any further. If you wish to add a Microsoft account at a later date, you can do, but for those that don't want it, this is the way forward. So we'll choose work or school, and we'll choose sign in options. And this is the bit where we can override it. So we'll choose to join a domain. Even though we're not actually connecting to a domain, we will choose the domain option. And then you can put in a username. So who's going to use this device? You can put in whatever you want to. I'm just going to put in user, because it's going to be a new user. And we'll click on next. And if you want to, you can create a password. Because this is PC is possibly going to be sold, I'm just going to leave the password blank. But obviously, for security purposes, ideally you do want to set a password and a memorable one, but I'm not going to, so we'll click on next. And now we can choose which other apps we're going to be using. So do you want to let Microsoft use your apps and location? Now these are entirely up to you. I'm going to choose no for all of these because I don't want any tracking, or at least to be minimal. So we're going to choose required only for the diagnostic data, and we're not going to improve inking or typing experience. Basically going to choose no for pretty much all of this here. Obviously read them through. If you want to allow any of those, you're more than welcome to do so. I personally would rather not. So again, it's going to check for more updates now that we're connected. And there we go. It looks like it's going to be installing the latest version. So it's going to be 24H2. I think it's installing in the background. And it will just let it do its own thing. Again, just let it do its thing. Be patient. And you can come back when it's done. Okay, so now the update has been downloaded and it's just doing some final preparation. Again, keep your computer on, don't touch it or press reset or anything like that, or turn off the mains. That will corrupt the files. Again, just be patient, let it do its thing. And here we have it. Here is our first boot screen. So at this point, it's really tempted to just get on and start clicking on stuff and doing all the stuff that you want to do to your computer. But just hold on a little bit. There's things that we need to do. So you can check your device manager to see what actually needs installing. Now you may find that it actually looks okay and that everything is fully installed and working and there's no exclamations or anything, but we're still going to need to go ahead and install the latest drivers just to be on the safe side. Now depending on your motherboard, you may find that some of them will have some sort of auto installation routine, in which case it'll get on and install the drivers for you. There may be a pop-up. You can choose to use that if you want to. It's entirely up to you. Just watch out for those that there aren't other things being installed that you don't necessarily want, such as possibly a Norton 360 installation or things like that. Generally, it's easier just to go ahead and do the drivers manually. So this is an AMD system. We've got an AMD graphics card. We've also got an AMD motherboard and an AMD processor. So for this is really very easy indeed. All we need to do is to open up a web browser. And unfortunately, we're going to have to go through all of this palaver to actually get started. We'll just reject all of this and we'll open up a new tab. And what we want to do is to type in AMD drivers. And just go to the AMD support page. So at which point you can do the auto detect install. This is probably going to be the best one for a lot of you. So just click on download Windows drivers. There'll be a very small download. and then you can open up that file, double click on it, user account control, just click on yes, and get rid of the start menu. We can basically close all these windows down now, and this will start the installation process. If you've got an Intel based processor, Intel graphics card or an NVIDIA graphics card, you can do this after. The first thing to do is to do your motherboard and chipset drivers. Those are really important for stability and also for things like fans, all that kind of stuff, to make sure that everything's working as it should do. This will also install things like most audio drivers, possibly your Wi-Fi drivers as well, because they are generally integrated quite heavily with the chipsets on a lot of devices nowadays. But anyway, like I said, this is an AMD version, so we're going to install the AMD software. There'll be a couple of options on this. We'll get the option for the graphics driver and also the chipset drivers and other fundamental things for the actual motherboard itself. So just to clarify, chipset drivers first of all. So if you're on AMD, go to amd.com. If you're on Intel, go to intel.com. Get those done. Then after that, you can do the graphics card drivers if you're using something else like a GeForce card, NVIDIA, etc. So it's come up here, it's detected our graphics card and it's got a recommended driver. So we're happy with that. So we're going to click on next. Now we've actually got to allow this. I'm going to not allow that. We'll click on next, privacy view. We'll skip that and then it comes up. This is the important one for us. So this is the chipset driver. So we've got power management, the GPIO driver, PSP driver, PCI device driver, the GPIO driver, and also the SM bus driver. So these are really, really important for the stability of your system. Without them, it's going to run like a dog, crash, and not perform at its best. So we'll click on install. Again, as always, when the software is installing, just let it go ahead and do its thing. Try not to do other things in the background, as that may interfere. You may find every now and then that your screen will go blank during the installation. At the end, you'll say installation is complete, and it is recommended to do a restart after this is done. So we'll click on finish, and again it's going to say you must restart now. We'll choose restart later, and we'll just make sure that all of this looks good, as it does. So now we can do a restart, and again there probably will be more updates. With a new system, there'll probably be various updates and they'll keep on happening periodically. When this is rebooted, we are going to go back into Windows Update just to finalize the updates before we continue any further. So our system's back up and running now. So we'll go into Start, go into Settings, and then we'll scroll down to Windows Update. And yeah, there's an absolute ton of updates to go, even though we've just done a fresh installation. But it's found all this stuff, and also there's a cumulative update, etc. So yeah, there's lots of things to do. So we'll just download and install all and let it go and do its thing. Again, whilst you're doing Windows updates, it's a very, very good idea to not do anything else on your system, because if you're perhaps installing something like Steam or Epic Games or just some RGB software, whatever it is, that can interfere with some of the Windows system files which are possibly going to be in use during the Windows update process and also for the antivirus, etc. So just let it do its thing, let Windows Update continue, do all of its updates, and then when it's done, finally you can then try to see if there's any more updates available, but otherwise your system is pretty much ready to go. Now obviously, like I said, if you have an NVIDIA graphics card and you install the graphics later, that's absolutely fine, but try and do your chipset drivers first of all, Windows updates, then after that's all done, then do your graphics card drivers, and you'll have a much better time and it's less likely to get any corruption. So I'm going to let this carry on doing the updates in the background, and yeah, I think that's going to wrap this one up. Okay, so as you can see, Windows is still updating there in the background, so I'm going to let it carry on and do its thing. Now at this point as well, when the updates are done, if you want to clean up Windows even further and remove some of the things such as Copilot and some of the other stuff which is in Windows, I highly recommend using XD Anti-Spy. Now we have done a separate standalone video on that which goes into some depth. I will link that in the video description, and again I strongly encourage you to check that out. For me, it made my other system much better in general use. It gets rid of Copilot and all those other things as well which you don't necessarily want going on, and also a lot of Microsoft's telemetry data, which again a lot of people don't appreciate. But hopefully you appreciated this video, so if you did, leave a like. If you want to see more content of this on a daily basis, maybe consider hitting subscribe and the chime notification. That way you'll be notified of future video releases. I think that's going to wrap this up. I've been Mike. This is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.